Good morning, good morning, good morning. Q, how you doing? We are here for another episode of the Buckeye Roast, man, and it looks like 5 a.m. on your face. How's
Bro,
it going?
I feel like I look crazy, bro. Oh my God. All right, we good. What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? Let me get in the comments real quick. People are in here lively today. What's going on, everybody? I'm good, Ryan. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I mean, I was having a great morning, and then I look at the chat, and the first thing I see in the chat is a Miami and go Canes, and you know the rules around here. We have to shout him out. I don't know
Yo,
how. I don't
last
know how the chat let him do this, but this is the second time in 2 weeks now. Jima has been the first comment, and you know the rules around here. He gets the shout out, but we're not going to let Jimo deter our morning. We have a big show today, and I mean, when I say this might be the most requested guest outside the name of Chris Drew, we have heard about this show, this person that people wanted us to collab with forever now, and we are finally making it happen. We have our guy Juck from Juck on Bucks joining us today, so let's just bring him on up. Juck, how you doing?
Fantastic, guys. How you doing? I usually start my morning watching. Might as well join you once in a while. Good to see you.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. Definitely rather have you on the show than in the comments. So it's great to have you here. It's a little bit disappointing with that amazing background that you have behind us that we have you squeezed tight to this three panel. But when they check out your show, they can see the best drop, the backdrop in Buckeye Media. So shout out to the backdrop and an amazing show that you do over on Menace to Sports. So congratulations on that and all the success you've had over the past few months.
It's been pretty wild. Thanks, guys. I'm just having a good time, man. Talking Buckeyes. What could be better?
Yeah, we need you to green screen that so we could just fill in. We could have one panel just going all the way in the background.
I did it when I went on vacation. I green screened it in my hotel room.
That is next level production right there that we can appreciate. Q, man, you normally get us started with the early parts of the show, so let's dive right into it. What do you got today?
All right, so let me get some house cleaning out the way. We already gave Gmo his shout out. Everybody, don't forget, we are on audio podcast, so Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I know y'all either have iPhones or you're on Spotify. It's one of the two. So give a 5-star review over there. Leave a question, comment, all that good stuff. We greatly appreciate it. For the most, and like the video. If you're on Twitter, hit the like button, hit the retweet. If you're not in the community, get in the community. We have both a college football one and an Ohio State one. So go ahead and jump in there. And while you're in there, like and retweet that video. That's mostly what I got for house cleaning. So let's jump into it. Juck, I want to start with you. You've obviously blown up over the past year. You're doing very successful, and you have joined the guys over at Menace in the mornings. I want to ask you, how's that experience been? I know Zach is great, Pat is cool, and they have some other guy, some short dude that also co-hosts there. So what to ask, how has your transition been over to Menace?
It's been great. I mean, Chris and I are buddies. You know, we have breakfast together, and we had for some time before we ever even discussed me going over there. You know, I had gotten some offers to go some other places before that, and it just didn't feel quite right. But with Chris being a buddy of mine, it was like, you know, this just makes sense for me. Let's give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. And so far, man, so good. Everybody's been the Menace Army has really received me well. I wasn't so sure how that was going to go. You know, they're kind of an intimidating bunch online. but yeah, they welcome me right in, and things have been going real smooth.
That's good. And I do want to ask also, what got you into it? What made you want to start, podcast and talking Ohio State football?
So to be quite honest with you, Q, the Missouri game, I was so furious after that Missouri game that I said, that's it. I'm doing it. I'm taking the jump. I'd thought about it for years, but I ordered all the stuff. By the time it came in, everything was so positive that the show never took the turn that I was intending to start on, which was very, very angry. And it was very positive ever since then.
Man, we famously did a Mark Rogers right after the Missouri game. I think Ron and I podcasted that whole day. We had a show in the morning. We had a pregame show. So by the time the postgame show hit, it's like 1 a.m. We're on Mark Rogers, and I'm just trying. I'm like, this is not my channel. I cannot cuss. I gotta get through this without getting Mark Rogers banned from the internet. So that was a fateful day, and I feel your pain. So let's jump into it. Everybody go ahead and like that video, and I got some topics for y'all for pre-show. Okay, so player branding deals. The Branch brothers, who famously were supposed to come to Ohio State a few years ago before Lincoln Riley got the job and they went to USC. They signed a deal with Jordan. This is the first Jordan player brand deal in college football. Thoughts on this? Is that cool? Not cool? Well, how you feeling about it, Juck? I'll start with you.
I like it. I like it a lot. I really like Jackson Dart's deal a little better. That's the one that I would have preferred, which is a private jet deal that he can actually use the private jet. It's the first of its kind, and that's how they do it down at Ole Miss with the NIL. They really got it going on.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a changing tide in the NIL space. You saw Cooper Flagg, Duke star freshman, just signed a shoe deal with New Balance. So it's interesting to see the shoe companies dip their toe in the water when it comes to the football side of things, as we know how much of an impact they've had behind the scenes on basketball pre-NIL. So if the shoe money starts coming in a direct way for these schools, I think it definitely can be a game changer, because you've seen what it's done for Duke and Kentucky, Louisville, all of those schools that have gotten involved with all of the shoe companies when it comes to the backdoor deals that we've seen in the sport for the last 15 or so years. So to see them getting involved in an official capacity could definitely be a game changer and tip the scale for certain universities that have those relationships with those schools. And then it makes it interesting from the side of Nike and Phil Knight. How involved are they going to be when, like, in the past, you had to decide, where are you going to push these kids? Is it going to be Duke? Is it going to be Kentucky? Another one of these Nike schools in the football space. How interested is Phil Knight going to be in throwing NIL deals or shoe deals to players at Ohio State, Miami, Texas, schools like that, when he's trying to build a champion at Oregon? So it'll be interesting to see how involved Nike gets into that, and if they're willing to dip their toe in the water as far as the football side of things. You see them getting involved at USC with Jordan Brand, but we'll see how extensive that becomes. If it starts to become an advantage for other universities, I don't know how interested Oregon's going to be in maintaining that.
Yeah, I think kind of the cool part in this particular deal is USC is a Nike school. So with them signing with Jordan Brand, it gives them a chance to really create their own merch and wear it on the field. I imagine just like, yeah, I'm wearing my own cleats in college that no one else has, or my own gloves, or wherever you go with that. So I think that's cool with this deal. And Juck kind of jumped me on this one, but I was going to ask, if you were a college athlete and you can't pick private jet now, which company would you want to have a deal with? Juck, I'll start with you.
I would prefer a restaurant. I don't know, man. I'm just a restaurant guy. I love that. That's what I would be drawn to. If I could be like, I don't know, this partner of like an Outback Steakhouse or something, that would be really cool to me.
Awesome. Ron.
I mean, it's the most Yinzer response ever. I mean, I'm getting a Permanis deal. You got to put on for the city. If it's not going to be a shoe deal or some crazy jet deal, I'd definitely go with something hometown related and get a P-Bros promotion. You see me walking around with like custom Permani Air Forces or something.
No, definitely a lot of cool deals out there. So, all right. So this next one I got for you. So Ron, I gave you the graphic, and this one's interesting. So Lane Kiffin, one of our favorite coaches in college football.
More like Lane bitching, am I right?
That's right.
So Lane Kiffin famously tweeted out an ESPN article. The article states how Ohio State built a $20 million roster. Is it national championship or bust? Or I read that wrong, but you know what I mean. So my question for y'all is it fair or foul? Because Ole Miss had 20 incoming players out of the portal. Walter Nolan being probably the headline there. So maybe not the star power, but they got plenty of guys out the portal. So is this fair or foul coming from Lane Kiffin? Go ahead, Juck.
You listen to Nick Saban over here on game day, and what's he saying? Ole Miss can finally do it. They can finally compete in the trenches with Bama and Georgia. Where'd those guys come from? They just came from this portal cycle. It was a huge portal cycle for them. In fact, the number 1 rated class where they took in 25 new players, Ohio State took in 7, which ranks 122nd out of 134 as far as numbers brought in. It's ridiculous of this guy to point the finger at Ohio State about this. I can't even believe he's doing it. I mean, that's just him, right? He gets under my skin. He does it effectively. That's what he wants to do, and he does.
Ron.
I mean, the irony of this coming from the school that signed Robert Kimdiche, like they've literally decided to go all in on NIL 15 years before NIL was a deal. They legit put together a class that looked just like Ohio State's in the first year of legal NIL. You see Ohio State really stacking the funds and putting together an NIL class for the history books. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. They're at a 311 class score. Last year, they didn't even crack 300. And for a guy that coaches at Ole Miss, a school that has a history of doing this before it was even legal, is crazy. And it's funny because how can you criticize a school like Ohio State when you would be doing the same thing down there if you were getting the same funds? You did it when it wasn't even legal, and you expect me to think that, like, oh, Lane Kiffin's going to get $20 million in NIL donations and say, hey, no, let's take 10 to build a children's hospital. Like, he's not turning down any money that he's getting offered. If he got just as much as Ohio State, he'd build a worse roster because he wouldn't be able to get the kids that Ohio State's still stealing off him, and Quinshawn Judkins and Davison Igbinosun. And this is sour grapes. Oh, and Q, help me out. Who's the last one that I'm forgetting from Ole Miss? The D tackle. Taiwan Malone. There we go. I mean, Ryan Day has been raiding the cupboards like me at 1 a.m. when I wander out of bed for a snack. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous what Ryan Day has been able to do to his staff. And if I was Lane Kiffin, I would have sour grapes too. But instead of bitching to the media, I'd go cry to boosters and try to get my money up like Ohio State, because at the end of the day, this is the rules. This is the game now. And if you don't want to do it, go to the NFL, go be an offensive coordinator. You saw what Chip Kelly just did. He didn't want to put up with it. He's the OC at Ohio State now. I'm sure Chip's going to get hired after the national championship. Maybe we could call Lane and he could come coach his former players here at Ohio State and be our OC next year.
Yeah, I'm on the line with both of y'all. I think I talked about it earlier in camp. I don't know where Ohio State got this transfer university line from. This is one of the very first times Ohio State has hit the portal and got guys. And 2, we only got a few. We just, we did it efficiently. We got plugins that we really need, and we also found great players as well. So everyone's been doing it for a while, but when Ohio State catches up, now it's suddenly NIL university. What do they say? It's no fun when the rabbit has the gun. So I remember going class by class, and every signing day, me and Ron talk about it all the time. It's not who's flipping to Ohio State. It's who's flipping from on signing day, because everybody's throwing millions or whatever they want to at Ohio State commit. So, I'll pull the violin strings out for Lane on that one. Okay.
And it's not the first time. He did this before with the $13 million line, and he did this to help get his boosters fund this portal class that he just got. He's the reason that $13 million number was being thrown around from that comment Ryan Day made in June of 22. And that comment with that $13 million that they had attached to this class went on and on and on until Ross Bjork came out and told everyone, no, it was 20. Thanks, Ross. And now they're all attached to that $20 million figure. Man, I just can't believe this guy. But I don't know why he keeps talking about Ohio State. Like, worry about what you got going down there. I mean, you got a tough schedule here.
Speaking of that, I mean, we saw one of our players chime in with a similar sentiment. Jermaine Matthews told Lane Kiffin, "What are you doing worrying about us? You play a game in 4 days. Lock in as a coach." I wonder, like, what recruits think when they see things like that. I mean, I saw a lot of people complaining, like, "Oh, Jermaine Matthews shouldn't be saying that, this and that." I'm like, he hit the nail on the head. What are you doing worrying about a team hundreds of miles, if not thousands? I'm not a geography major. North, like, what are you doing worrying about them? You don't play them. They're not on your schedule. Worry about your team. Lock in. You got the SEC schedule in front of you. Oh, it just means more. Clearly it doesn't, because what's going on in Ohio means more to Lane, being that he got a game on Saturday and he's tweeting about the Buckeyes.
No, I agree with you 200% there. All right, moving on to some Ohio State stuff. But while we're here, everyone like the video. We got people in here now. Again, if you are on Twitter, retweet, do all that stuff. And again, If we are too handsome for you to look at, do not forget we have audio, not to distract you away from whatever work you were doing this early morning. So Apple Podcast, Spotify. Let's jump into some Ohio State talk. So I want to talk Ohio State on the trail, and we got a recruiting expert, Juck, in here. So we're going to talk some Ohio guys as well. So you had this question, Juck, and I'll throw it out there and let you answer it. And for the chat, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. But Justin Frye on the trail, he got a commitment from Javon McFadden. We talked about finally getting the O-line guy on the trail, which makes everybody a little bit more pleasant around Justin Frye. But I want to ask you this. Does McFadden make you happy, make you feel better about what Justin Frye is doing on the trail this cycle?
Well, I mean, quite literally the last guy on the board. It absolutely had to be a win. As far as the player, Javon McFadden, I love him. Yeah, I really, really like him. He's got the size you need. He's got the foot speed you need. But most importantly to me, when I'm looking at an offensive lineman, does he got the dog in him? And this dude's a dog. And that's what I want. You know, if I can see that, I don't care about the stars. You know what I mean? If you got a coach who can develop, give me 5 of those guys every cycle and go do what you do. So, yes, I do feel a lot better. I still think that we should be taking at minimum 5 every cycle. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, particularly with the roster limit moving up to 105. I mean, you just got to. There's no reason not to. So if they close the class with 3, not going to be so great. I know that they're trying to get at least 1 more, but there really is nobody on the board. So that's going to need to come from a flip or a lower rated guy that, you know, they see some potential in, which is fine too. But no, I definitely feel better about it. Had to happen, but he got it done. So credit where credit's due. Yeah.
So then I will ask you this, and I'll open up to Ron. Are you happy where this 25 class sits overall?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a really well-rounded class. The guys that are in the class, I think there are so many, even, you know, look at the lower ranked guys. The guys at the bottom half of this class, I see so much potential in so many of these guys. And then you got a guy like Trajan Odom, you know, a 3-star guy out of North Carolina. I think this guy's eventually going to be a real impact player on the defensive line. I've only got one. You know, people talk about some potential flip risks. There's only one that I'm really concerned about, and that's Zahir Mathis, the edge rusher out of Imhotep in Philly. Yep. I think that he is about a 50-50 coin flip of flipping to Penn State at some point. And, you know, Naeem Offord, I feel pretty confident in, even though he's going out to Oregon. I don't think he's going to Auburn or Alabama. I'm almost certain of that. And people talk about TJ Alford, not worried about that. Jarquez Carter, not worried about that. I talked to both of those guys. I feel good with that. So really, it's just Zahir Mathis. But overall, I love the class.
Ron.
Yeah, I mean, an absolute loaded class. And you're looking, I mean, you talked about Justin Frye, the Javon McFadden signing checked the boxes on all 3 requirements that we have around here, at least 6'5", 300 pounds, and a nasty streak. All 3 of those he joins. Carter Lowe and Jake Cook, it rounds out. I mean, you got Jake Cook slightly ranked higher than Javon McFadden, 6'5", 295 guy out of Ohio. I mean, if they're able to add 1 or 2 more guys as far as bodies in the room, like Juck said, and we get to 4 or 5, I think Justin Frye goes from being public enemy number 1 to people singing his praises by the end of this class, especially if the offensive line plays well with the bodies that he's been able to put in the room. That was a huge get for him to get. But I agree with Juck. I mean, how can you complain? It's a 311 point class score. They're the number 1 class in the country, headlined by a top quarterback in the class, 2 5-star cornerbacks. The safety room is absolutely loaded. We've seen an upgrade in linebacker recruiting in this class. Larry Johnson woke up for this recruiting cycle and actually decided to sign people. Bo Jackson, a recruitment that looked shaky at the beginning and that we were worried about. And then we have Quincy Porter, one of the fastest rising wide receivers in the class. A lot of talk has been made about no five-star wide receivers. I'm the person that's made a lot of talk about that. But, I mean, with convincing guys to come play behind Jeremiah Smith, probably not the easiest task, especially when you have guys lurking in the 26th class like Jabari Brady, Chris Henry Jr., Kata Dixon-White, a bunch of guys that have had their eye on Ohio State. Convincing someone to come in and compete in that room with the guys coming in behind them, the guys ahead of them, probably not the easiest sell, but Quincy Porter, fast rising up the boards, a 6'3" wide receiver out of New Jersey. You don't see as much hype for the Northeastern kid, so if he goes and balls out, during his senior season and then is able to make a name for himself in the all-star circuit, we could see him flirt with potentially a 5-star rating by the end of the cycle. So that's someone to keep an eye on. I think this class is absolutely loaded. And if they're able to top it off with an SEC-style class and add 3 to 4 more bodies, if Ohio State signs a 29-person class, man, we're throwing a party on this platform because we've been asking for more than 24 recruits now for years, and the Buckeyes have finally done it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you both more. So I got this question for Juck. You kept tabs on the Ohio guys. So talk to me about the talent in the Ohio 26 class. I know there's a lot of guys out there. I checked 247. They have 9 guys rated in the top 250, and some big time linemen are out there. So talk to me about the talent in Ohio in 2026.
For sure, 4 really high profile, big time linemen and 2 pretty well true tackles, and that's where we're really lacking on the offensive line is tackles. You got Sam Greer out of Hoban, 6'8", 290, top 100 overall prospect. Everybody's going to want him. I think it's going to come down to a classic Ohio State-Michigan battle for him. You got Adam Guthrie. We've talked about him ad nauseum, doesn't have his offer yet, 6'7", 290, looking great. I've watched his film from his first game this year. He looks bigger. He looks stronger. His offer's coming, I'm certain of it, real soon here. Don't know. There's definitely some ground to be made up there, but ultimately I think he wants to be a Buckeye. So great news there. Then you got Max Riley, who's the highest rated out of all of them, out of Avon. Kid's a stud, total stud. He's about 6'5", but his dad's 6'8", and his dad kept growing until he was 19. So, a chance that he grows into be a true tackle as well. And Will Conroy out of St. Ignatius, who it looks like the Buckeyes are going to take a pass on, and that's a shame. Not quite sure why. There's some people that think he is the number 1 center in the country, and it doesn't appear like things are moving at all in any positive direction. But Sincere Johnson out of Glenville, one of my favorite prospects in the class. He's a linebacker, not offered yet, but we look at the success Arvell Reese is having, and I mean this guy like a clone of Arvell. Honestly, they're so similar. He's just a little bit bigger, Sincere, and I'm waiting on that one. Jacoby Clapper, another linebacker out of St. X. He absolutely killed it on Friday night. James has offered him, so we'll see how that moves. I think he's kind of leaning towards Notre Dame right now. You also got, am I babbling on too much here?
No, go for it.
Storm Miller out of Strongsville, another linebacker who I was not too high on until I just watched him this Saturday. This kid's legit. He's in is it Strongsville, and they played Avon, Max Riley's team. That was a heck of a game, but he looked amazing. This kid was really good. He's the one with the brother that went to Clemson. His brother's an offensive lineman. He went to Clemson, but he's supposedly interested in the Buckeyes. We'll see what happens there. And my favorite prospect of the entire class is Rock Hill up here in out of Hoban. He's a cornerback, and he's absolutely fantastic. This guy's locked down. I'm not comparing anybody to Devin Sanchez, but he's as close as we've had in Ohio to a Devin Sanchez type corner that I can recall.
Yeah, it very much seems that we talked about over the last few years, the talent in Ohio wasn't quite where we had to go out of state a lot more. It seems like it's really coming back. Do you feel that trend? I mean, you just named 10, 15 guys. Do you feel like in the next few years that trend of Ohio talent, because Ron is a big guy on the class, has a start in Ohio. And I've said very much any player in the top 10 players in Ohio all get offers. I don't care what position they play. I don't care where they're from. They're all getting offers from me.
Not just offers. Sign every damn one of them. Why not? Chris Drew and I implore everybody. We're going to do it on camera one day, but I implore everyone that's watching this show, go look at the top 10 kids in Ohio for the last 5 years and tell me how this class or how this team is worse if they sign all 10 of them. Just go get them, and if they transfer, let them go. I mean, I'm not going to sing because of copyright, but you know the song, let them go. If they want to leave, you got to let them go.
I don't think you're going to get copyright for that, but thank you for watching out for the channel. But Juck, as I was asking, do you feel the next few years the trend of Ohio talent is really up in this game?
I really do. And it's great because it coincides in a time where I think we are definitely it's going to be most advantageous as we move from 85 to 105, not to fill out that 85 below with the next 4-star guys on our list, but to bring in hometown guys who are going to stay in the program, guys that don't think they're going to play until they get 3 or 4 years of development, guys that want to be here. And to round that out with a bunch of Ohio kids is just going to be fantastic. So I think we're going to get more of them in the class than we used to. And I think it's great because it does coincide with an uptick in talent. There are some theories about that. I don't know why it is, but we did have a big lull for a while where we just weren't producing as much talent. And all of a sudden it's just booming.
All right. That sounds good. Gets me excited. So, final recruiting question I want to ask. So Ohio State is still looking for their 2026 quarterback. They've missed out on pretty much all their high-ranking targets have committed elsewhere. So first question I want to ask, if there's no big-time quarterback on the board for Ohio State, where do you want to see them go in the 2026 class? I know there's some Ohio guys out there. Levi Davis is one we've talked about. So start with you, Juck. Where do you want to see them go for 26 for quarterback?
Well, for me, this is, if you're not going to get a guy who's very highly rated, I would say that what I would want you to do next is to get a guy with tremendous upside in some area who lacks in another. What I don't want is a guy like Brady Palmer, and no offense to Brady Palmer, but he's the guy that I think is most likely that they're going to grab here, who is, not very skilled, but he's a real heady guy, the kind of guy you would like. But what I want is a high upside guy, and I think Levi Davis fits the bill. Obviously, what's his setback? It's his size. Without that, if the guy was 6'3", he might be a 5-star. I think he's fantastic. So that is the alley I want to go with that kind of with that choice. That said, I don't know, man. BP Miller, and I don't know if we're going to get to this. You look at BP Miller out there on Friday. This guy is, if you're going to take a flyer on a kid at quarterback, like a Levi Davis, why not try with BP? The dude looks like Lamar Jackson out there in high school. There's no difference in that film. There really isn't.
Yeah, I actually had that question in here next. And I think in 26, Ron, do you have a guy in 26 that we haven't got? Let me ask you that first before we move on. Is there a guy in 26 that you're looking at to get in this class? You're like, yeah, I would take him for just the talent and upside.
Samaj Bills, a quarterback out of Philadelphia, 6'1", 180, a little bit of a smaller guy, absolutely destroyed Penn State 7-on-7 camp this past year. I mean, the Penn State writers were writing about him, saying that it was the best 7-on-7 performance that they've ever seen in Happy Valley, better than Caleb Williams. So that is a guy that I expect to be a late riser, plays in the Northeast, doesn't get a lot of attention. I know Chris and Cam are big on the Levi Davis train. I would love to see him at Ohio State. I'm not sure if it happens, but if he gets the offer, it would be great to see. But another guy that I see outside of that main cluster of people that I would like to see the Buckeyes go after, Samaj Bills out of Roman Catholic in Philadelphia, is a kid that I have my eye on as far as a riser in his senior season.
Yeah, there you go. So back to Bogpin Miller. So I'm thinking, and I'll start with this one. I mean, right now, is that type of kid you take a flyer on if using the 2026 class? I'd say, yeah. Currently in this class, I mean, 6'4", 180 at Ohio State, he's going to clock in at 38 miles per hour on the mixed scale. We know how that scale goes. So if he's running, 24 right now, a couple years with Mick, he's going to be running past cars. I love that talent at wide receiver. I don't know if I would want to move him to quarterback, but I'll throw it to you, Ron, since Juck brought it up. Is that a guy you would maybe want to see try a quarterback if we don't get a 26 guy?
Well, this room, I mean, you look at the quarterback room, you would assume Will Howard is the first overall pick in the draft next year after we win the national championship and he wins the Heisman. So that guy's going to be out of the door. You have Lincoln Keenholz, Julian Sayin, Aaron Nolan, all guys that are going to have to make decisions next year about what they want to do in this room. Obviously, you have Tavian St. Clair coming in. I'm not ruling out a scenario where the Buckeyes are potentially replacing 3 quarterbacks in their room. So I'm not sure how that turns out. And if there's a scenario where they lose 2, 3 guys out of that room, you might not have a choice, but he might have to just play wide receiver. I mean, he might have to play quarterback if there's not enough bodies in the room.
Yeah, and interesting to see. I don't know, Juck, is that something you really want to see?
No, I think my more than anything when I was watching it, it was about fear, Q. I was worried that there's going to be some, middle tier. He had a Boston College quarterback offer. And my fear is we're going to start to see some middle tier ACC Big Ten teams start to really pursue him as a quarterback. And I don't want to lose this kid out of the class. I think he's just a special athlete. And really, you can do a whole lot with him. Obviously, that he's just ridiculous. But, that said, no, I'd still keep him at wide receiver. But it is fun to think about because he is ridiculous.
No, that I follow you there. Just seeing his highlights and the way he moves, I'm like, man, I can't wait to see him in space with Chip Kelly. I'm like, I don't care how you do it. Put him at quarterback, run some wildcat, do something. But it's another guy. You're gonna have to get the ball in his hands. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Ohio State. It is officially game week. Before we do that, I actually want to give it to Juck. Hey, Juck, let people know where you are. Go ahead and plug all your stuff. So we're in the middle of the show, so this is a good time. Go ahead and plug where people can find you on the daily.
Follow me at X at Juck on Bucks. Check me out, Juck on Bucks, on Menace to Sports every morning at 9 a.m. And we do a lot of live shows over at the Juck on Bucks channel in the evening. We're going to live stream during some games this weekend. Should be a blast. And always on the post-game show after the Buckeyes game, every single one. Come check us out at Juck on Bucks.
There you go. Go ahead and follow. Check out the podcast, all that good stuff. Everybody, while you're here, don't forget to like the video. We are up to about 200 people in here. So like, retweet. If you got a friend out there who's having trouble waking up in the morning, let him know we are live. We
let
are
him
here
know
in
that Q does it every morning at 5 a.m. So if he can do it, you can do it.
The big if. Oh, man. So I want to jump into Ohio State game week. And Chuck, you actually brought this up, and this is kind of where I want to spin a boat because I think this is a good discussion. So we talked about this earlier in camp. We talked about, is there a culture change going on at Ohio State? So you asked the question. You said, is this finally going to be an Ohio State team that comes out and plays with some punch you in the face, bust your head, hair on fire attitude? So we talked about it. The DBs and wide receivers have been going at it in camp. It's been famous, the trash talk. Chris went to practice. He was talking about the hitting going on out there. So, Juck, I want to let you lead it off. Do you feel like this is the first team that'll come out in a while with their hair on fire?
That moniker of Ryan Day being soft and Ohio State being soft, it's more than just the play people are talking about. It's that they've generally been the whole team has felt very reserved. And I've heard Ron bring this up before, a story of, during one version of the game where he saw somebody on the Michigan sideline just firing everybody up, getting them rowdy and thinking, man, we got nobody like that. We've seen them walking into halftime during the game, totally quiet. Like, what's going on here? This team is different. This team has a different feel. You brought up Jermaine Matthews tweeting at Lane Kiffin. Like, this team gets down like that. And I'm for it, man. I think that kind of edge is something that's been lacking. I think it's back. I think it's going to have a totally different feel out there. They're going to be a team that is absolutely going to let you know that they're whooping it. They're going to let you know. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, Ron, I'll let you go up next. We've talked about it during camp. It feels like Ryan Day is letting them go a little bit. We've heard about fighting in practice. We've heard the guys going at it, a lot of trash talk. He's like, look, as long as you don't come off the sideline, you good with me. Do you feel like Ryan Day is leading this culture change and saying, look, I can't be as reserved as I normally am at this point? It's win or go home. So do you feel like Ryan Day is leading this culture change?
No, I feel like there are four, not at all. I feel like he's kind of lucked into the culture change. There are 4 regional culture shifts on this team, and they can be attributed to the kids from New Jersey, the kids from South Florida, the Ohio kids, and Texas. And when you put all of them together, you've got a bunch of dogs from 4 different places, and I feel like all of them have an internal pride that they're fighting for every time that they're on the field. Like, they're representing from where they're from. And I feel like that comes out in the dog because, yes, they are all Buckeyes at the end of the day. But, you beat Notre Dame last year, and they weren't screaming, Ohio. They weren't singing about the team up north. They were screaming Jersey in the background. You could hear them and how much that meant for them to represent from where they're from on a national scale for the Buckeyes like that. So when you see these kids from South Florida, and these kids, when they leave their hometowns, they hear it from their hometown schools. They hear it from the people that wanted to see them go to the schools locally and watch them put on for their hometown teams. So they come up here with showing, hey, I made the right decision. I came to Ohio State for a reason, to accomplish a goal. They're not soft like they said that school is. I'm going to show you this school is different. I'm different. I'm making a difference. So I feel like these kids are not only representing from where they're from and Ohio State. So I feel like those different regionalities on the team have been a huge part of the culture shift. And Ryan Day has just kind of been along for the ride, because I mean, while it feels like there's been a slight culture shift from Ryan Day, I feel like he's done less lying in the press conference. And I feel like Ryan's kind of, he sees the writing on the wall as far as, what am I lying to you guys about? What do I have to hide? Everybody knows, everyone has seen my flaws for the past 3 years. The only thing that could be worse than the last 3 years is doing it again for the fourth. And you've already lived through it 3 times. So how much worse can it be? And I feel like Ryan Day is kind of almost in an effort mode, like, hey, we're going to get it done, and I'm going to do it however I can, because if I don't get it done, I might not be here. Well, I don't believe that Ryan Day's job's at risk. I mean, if it gets ugly, who knows? And I feel like Ryan's letting it all hang out this year, and he's going to really put it all on the table as far as this national championship run, and whatever consequences come from it. He has to do whatever it takes to do what he thinks is required to win, and I feel like he's going to do that.
Yeah, so I want to point back to a famous J-Book article that he did a couple years ago around the end of Urban's tenure. And he came out on the message boards and he said this team under Urban a lot of times does not come out and play with their hair on fire. He talked about those talent on Urban's teams, and they would just come out and you lose to Iowa and Purdue, and they'd be like, they'd sleepwalk into games. Ryan Day took over in 2019, and I would say really that is the last team to really come out with their hair on fire. We can talk about the talent on that team, but those guys were not messing around. Even going back to that Clemson loss, yeah, you made mistakes down the stretch, but as soon as kickoff hit, Justin Hilliard was running down at, I don't know, mixed clock, 38 miles an hour, smacking dudes, and really he was setting the tone. He was like, I feel like Ryan Day does have it in there, and I feel like that team did play with his hair on fire, and then we lost the Jeff Hafley defense, and it felt like it went back to bed. So I want to give Ryan Day some credit, but also, too, do you feel like that 2019 team is the last team to come out with their hair on fire and really play how you want Ohio State to play? I'll start, Juck, and ask you first.
I think you're right. I think that's a good benchmark there, and definitely they did. That was a team that just really felt different. And you know, these last couple teams, they have, I don't want to say deserve that soft moniker, but I can see why people would say that when they watch them play a big game. You don't see a lot of celebration after hits. I mean, you just don't see that gusto to play and just absolutely, you know, put fear into your opponent. I think we're going to see it, man. But yeah, 2019 is the last team that really felt like that to me.
Yeah. So, Ron, final question for you on this. Will that 2024 Ohio State team match that 2019 team energy as far as coming out and playing?
I hope so. I mean, you expect to see it. A lot has been made about the dancing before games, and I'd argue that the dancing is not the problem. It's the quality of the dancing. They're so bad at it that it radiates an aura of loser before the game. And if they were better at the dancing, people would be less mad at it, and it would give off a better energy before the game. Everybody's like, why did no one care when Justin danced? Well, 1, he won, and 2, he was better at it. Like when Kyle McCord is out there dancing, like the kids that you circle around at lunch when the weirdos start a dance circle at lunchtime, that's why we look bad, because that's how they're dancing. When everyone crowds around the kids that start dancing and everyone's cheering them on, even though it's horrible, but you don't want them to stop dancing. That's what it's like during our pregame. If we came out with some sort of swag and energy, we would be better fit to win these games. But they come out here with these loser-ass dance circles. If we let someone, either one that doesn't want to dance and they just go out there with some energy, or someone who can actually dance, none of these TikTok dances, none of the shaking our hips, none of that. Do something that'll strike fear in someone and then go out there and play ball. But it's the loser ass dancing. That's what it is. It's not dancing per se. It's the bad dancing. If we find someone that can dance on this team, watch out, Georgia, because we're winning 5 straight.
The end of No Swag University. Let it be. I love my school. Okay, so Juck, we have our daily sponsored, our biggest sponsor on the channel, SFE.
Oh, I was going to say, South Florida Express. I know we didn't get a new one.
Every day. They're just pumping money into this podcast so we can broadcast their brand all over. But you had a Jeremiah Smith question, so I do want to ask that. Before I do that, Chad, go ahead and like that video. And if you have questions for Juck, go ahead and get those in, and we will touch on those when we wrap the show. But I want to ask, so Jeremiah Smith, special freshman, he's been hyped, freshman All-American, Heisman is the floor, all the accolades that we have here. How many targets is acceptable for him to get per game? Is 2 or 3 targets for Jeremiah Smith per game acceptable? And will you deal with that because of the other weapons that Zone 6 has? Juck, I'll start with you.
I think that Jeremiah Smith is so special that you absolutely cannot ever have a game where this dude has a stat line like 2 catches for 15 yards. You can't let it happen. You have got to feed him the rock. You've got to, I don't care if they got to mandate it. The Randy rules with Jeremiah, I don't care. He's got to get his targets. It has to happen. You can't have games like Marvin Harrison had where you got a stat line like, 30 yards. Like, you just can't have it. You have got to make sure this guy, he's that special. He's that different. He's the first wide receiver since what's the kid from Bama that won the Heisman that has that kind of potential, in my opinion. Like, he could win the Heisman. I mean, probably never happened because he's a wide receiver, but he's got that kind of talent. He's just different, man. You've got to get him the rock. It's unacceptable not to.
Ron, okay. Calm down.
I might not see. Look, I might surprise you with this one.
How many targets minimum is required for Jeremiah Smith to get per game?
I think it's 3. And I say 3, which seems potentially low, just because I feel like we are gearing up, as much as I've said that Jeremiah Smith is going to be the best receiver in college football this year. While I still probably think he is, I feel like we're potentially gearing up for another potential season like we saw with SFE's first OT7 national championship run, where you had Jeremiah Smith as a junior on that team, but you also had Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss reminding you that, 1, they're a year older and more experienced, and 2, that they're just as highly rated. And if everybody is expecting Jeremiah Smith to get 8 targets out there and everybody's keying in on him, it's just going to open up things for Carnell. And I don't even know if Carnell is going to allow teams to be able to double Jeremiah with the run threat and the threat that he is as a receiver himself. So if Jeremiah's targets are lower, I expect one of the other SFE guys to completely ball out. We've seen it in years past where you're not able to completely eliminate either one of them. You saw them go win an OT7 national championship, and no one in the country was able to cover those 3. I don't expect anyone in college football to be able to do it over the next 2 years. So if his targets are a little bit lower his freshman year, I wouldn't be surprised, just because, 1, you have Emeka Egbuka, who is projected to be the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State by the end of this season. You have Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss, 2 guys that helped help build the SFE brand during the OT7 era ahead of Jeremiah Smith. So you have an extremely talented room, and despite Jeremiah being uber talented, potentially one of the most talented recruits that we've seen in Ohio State history, he still has, Brian Hartline was Brian Hartline before Jeremiah Smith got here. And I feel like sometimes that does get lost with the hype around Jeremiah that, hey, these guys were touted in the same way that Jeremiah was in years past. So this room is absolutely loaded. Emeka Egbuka, a former number 1 wide receiver in the class, just like Jeremiah Smith. So that can't get lost in the shuffle of things, especially with Will Howard being a slightly different quarterback that's not going to necessarily push the ball downfield in the same way. It'll be interesting to see what Jeremiah's run after the catch looks like at the college level as well, especially if he's not receiving the ball as deep as much as he did in high school.
Juck, you have some pushback on that? I saw you make a face.
Yes, I do. I love my man Ron, but I think you just compared Emeka Egbuka hype to JJ Smith hype. Is that what you said?
At one point in time, people thought about Emeka. Yeah, he was the number 1 wide receiver in the country.
He absolutely was, and it was nothing like this. Come on, Ron. Come on. Now listen, here's what I think about JJ, okay? I think you're dealing with a generational type guy. I can't remember. I don't think Calvin, Randy, JJ, that's where I'm at. I think that's how good this guy can be. And if you think like I think, then you understand where I'm coming from. Like, this dude needs the targets. He's not a normal Ohio State first round draft pick wide receiver like BI is going to be, like Carnell is going to be, like Mech might be. He's a totally different stratosphere to me. So, if that's your opinion, then you could see where I'm coming from. He needs more targets than 3. But if you think he's just in that boat, then I can understand where you're coming from by 3 being acceptable. We just have totally different opinions of what he is, I think.
I mean, even if he is, not if, he absolutely is everything that you just described. But in the history of Ohio State, you saw guys like Emeka. I mean, he wasn't as highly touted, still the number 1 wide receiver in the class, didn't go crazy his freshman year. JSN, arguably, I think that JSN personally has one of the craziest careers at Ohio State, despite the injuries. If he was healthy through his whole career, the numbers that he would have put up would have been insane in his junior year. You saw what he did his sophomore year, and he only received 11 catches his freshman year. Yes, Jeremiah is an absolute freak. Yes, he's going to start. Yes, he's going to see more snaps than all of those guys. But even a guy that is an absolutely freak show like JSN only receiving 11 catches, if Jeremiah ends up with 3 targets and 30 catches this year, 3 targets a game average and 35 catches, and the Buckeyes still win a national championship, I don't think many people are going to be upset with the change in the scheme with Carnell out there. I mean, a year ago, they were saying Carnell was better as a freshman than Marv was as a freshman. If you have what they're telling us, another Marv out there on the other side of Jeremiah Smith, the 2-headed monster in the background, and Will Howard toting the pill, I still think they can get it done reasonably with the offense moving the way it needs to with only 3 targets. Would I love to see JJ get 14? Yes. Would they be fine with 3? I think so.
Juck, you need to understand, Ron is a master of PR. He knows his game week. He's hyped Jeremiah Smith through the roof since he's committed years ago. Now it's time to keep the expectations low. And then on Saturday, when this fool go for 8 catches and 150 yards and 2 TDs, then he's going to come back in here and be like, yeah, what I told you all summer, it was true. So don't fall for it. I'm just letting you know. He's a master.
You got to lull everybody to sleep. Yeah, you get everybody out there parroting you, and then you bring back the tweets a year ago, and you say, look, I told y'all first.
Okay, so I got a couple quick hitters before, because I want to give time if anybody has any questions for Juck while he's here. We talked about the defensive ends under Larry Johnson, Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry. LJ called them basically ones on his defense, and I don't think we have, a better looking B in Kenyatta Jackson. That dude just looks like a walking first rounder. Every time I see him, I'm like, bro, this dude don't go first round. Something went wrong. So he talked about treating them as ones. My question for both of y'all this, and I'll start with Juck. Does Knowles finally let the D-line get after the passer this season?
I got to think that this was some part of the conversation with Jack and JT coming back. Part of me just wants to believe that, look, we're going to take the cage off of you. We're going to let you go. And at least more than they did last year. So, I mean, I guess, yes, I think that ultimately, yes, he does. He lets these guys roll a little bit because you got some better help. You got some faster linebacker play. You got what you need behind them to be able to let them go. And I think it's the best way to go about this. They want to create more turnovers. They've talked about that. Knowles has said it himself. Not happy with that turnover number last year. I don't think it was a huge problem myself. A lot of people are very upset about it. They want to see more. I get it. Let's go ahead. Let's get more. You got to let them go a little more if you want to do that.
Ron.
I got completely lost.
The question was, do you feel like
I got lost in the chat?
You're good. Is this the season Knowles lets the D-line get after the passer finally?
I mean, we started to see the wider splits against Missouri. Jack Sawyer started to come on towards the end of the year with the sack numbers. If the rotation is there, I mean, JTT talked about needing to bring it every week like he does against Penn State. So if they're able to do that, I don't see why the Big Ten's offenses are continuing to evolve. It's less 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So the fact that the evolution of the Big Ten, you're going to have guys chucking around a little bit more. I mean, maybe they will see more of the pass rush, and especially from these guys that want to play in the NFL. I feel like one of the things that kept JTT's stock low was his sack numbers. I see it would be imperative for both the Jack and JTT to be able to get the quarterback to the ground this year for their draft stock. So I do think that Knowles will find a way to get to the quarterback a little bit more this year, especially with the way that we saw the defense trend towards the end of the season last year.
100%, I agree with that. I need those Missouri wide splits. I need you guys running sprints to the quarterback. I have to see it this season. I as Juck said, with the speed at linebackers, the best secondary in college football that can really hold up. And what made that 2019 defense so special was, one, you had Chase Young getting after the quarterback, causing mistakes, and you also had a secondary that could hold up for like 4 seconds, which, usually it's only a couple and the guy is open. So I think the partnership of that is gonna feed families this
One
season.
other thing I wanted to note too, Jack Sawyer's body transformation over the course of his time at Ohio State. You look at Jack Sawyer in high school, he looks like Jack Sawyer as a junior. They brought him in and they put a bunch of shitty weight on him his freshman year.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no better way or more articulate way to say it. They rushed weight onto him and then had him play out of position. Overweight. They rushed weight onto him thinking that he was going to play a traditional strong side defensive end. And then they put all this weight on him. We're like, move in space. It's like, hey, you're the biggest you've ever been. You're not in a fit shape that we didn't put the weight on you in a clean way. Now shuffle laterally like you're a point guard on the basketball team. Like it just didn't make any sense. And then he was in kind of, it felt like a hybrid between the two roles, and then finally got his body this year to where you expected Jack Sawyer to be when you saw him as a freshman and they're tapping him on the helmet in the spring game and saying like, hey buddy, we're trying to complete a pass here for the fans. Can you stop getting a sack on every play? So I think now that he's completely transformed his body and he looks like the guy that we saw flying around that was the number 2 recruit in his class, I think that we're going to see a different, more energized and a fitter Jack Sawyer than we've ever seen here at Ohio State.
No, 100%. Okay, so moving on from defensive line, I want to touch on offensive line real quick. Juck, I want to ask you, we've seen the Georgia Tech offensive line come out and basically dominate. We know now how they got Josh Petty. This offensive line plays on Saturday. It is against Akron. We've known they've had sickness, they've been rotation. Guys have got a lot of reps. We're farther down on the depth chart. What do you expect from this offensive line on Saturday? They just come out and bowl people over.
I think that there has been so many years recently where we've come out in these first couple of games against a team like an Indiana, Miami, Ohio, or a Youngstown State, expecting that our offensive line should really control the line of scrimmage, and not seen that. Seen a real 50-50 fight up front. We better not see that. Now, Akron's got a good defensive end, best player on their team, but I expect our offensive line to absolutely manhandle these guys. And I think we're going to see it. And I think they're going to set the tone right off the rip that this is a new unit with mostly the same pieces, but it's a new unit, new mentality, and they're really going to play great.
You heard it here first. Bet the over. Okay, so my last two for you here. Okay, I need for Saturday your player to watch and your coach to watch on Saturday against Akron. That's for you, Jeff.
So for me, I think guys like us and folks who watch our shows are so in tune to the team that sometimes we have an answer like I don't know, Caden McDonald, like the second string defensive tackle. But the truth is, this answer is only one, and that's JJ Smith. We can't wait to see JJ unleash the beast. I want to see this guy in his first college game. As far as coach, I got somewhat like a jury out still on Keenan Bailey. We've got I think tight end is now the position that I have the most questions about right now. Yeah. How they're going to handle this tight end situation. And, G. Scott, to me, he's been a liability. I don't think he's probably improved enough to not be a liability. Is Will Kazmarek going to be the guy in 11 personnel? I think so. Waiting to see that, but just the jury's out on Keenan. I'm waiting to see how he handles this game in the first couple.
Yeah, Ron was looking around, making sure he got his full SFE check, because come to find out, Juck's sponsored as well. He might get a little less.
I'm looking around because I'm right there with them. These cousin hires are killing me. Like, it becomes apparent. Anytime you have a position group of question on this roster, it feels like you look around and you're like, why was he hired? And it's like it's always the same answer. It's someone's buddy. And I feel like when you have a guy like Jelani Thurman, a borderline 5-star that came in here at 6'4", 6'5", 260 by the end of his freshman year, that they can't figure out how to get on the field, whether it's off the field issues, whether it is not knowing where he's supposed to be on the field. I've heard people say, quarterback will get killed back there because he misses so many assignments. Well, someone's job should be on the line if you can't get a 5-star tight end ready to play and it puts your quarterback's health at risk. But I had one question that I wanted to get to Juck before we get out of here in regards to the Akron game. You talked about the deep cuts and the type of stuff that our audience is into. So I feel like this is a perfect question for our kind of audiences. Which quarterback throws a pass first against Akron? Lincoln Kienholz or Julian Sain?
Julian.
You think Julian throws before Lincoln?
I do.
Okie-doke.
I've gone back and forth on this because Chip's comments a week and a half ago made me take pause. I was leaning Julian on this question, and then he brought up Lincoln, and we really hadn't heard his name much, right? And it had me thinking, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I've gone back. It's got to be Julian. I know that they're going to want to keep Lincoln in the fold. They want him to come back next year. You want to feed him a little bit, but I just think Ryan Day is so infatuated with Julian saying that it's going to be Julian.
If it's Julian, what is the message? I mean, what is the message that you're sending to Lincoln and
Not
Air? Like, how do you keep them engaged the rest of the season? And if that was going to be the case and you knew that in spring, don't you kind of owe that to one of these kids to let them know, like, hey, where you sit coming out of spring, you're likely not going to play. And then at that point, you might as well redshirt and save your eligibility, especially if you're not one of the 3 quarterbacks that play on Saturday. Maybe we see 4. I mean, put the red shirt on immediately, right? I wouldn't even risk Ryan Day losing count of how many games I played for. Like, if you don't play me at Akron, don't even risk it. Don't put me in the rest of the year and save my red shirt. Even if I'm staying at Ohio State, leave that year of eligibility in my back pocket.
It's a good point. Do you think it's going to be Lincoln?
Do I think Lincoln's going to get the third one? Selfishly, I would like to see it just for the Twitter meltdown of all of the people that are going to lose their mind. But as a Buckeye fan and anyone that wants to see this program have success, I mean, it has to be Julian. I mean, people were just telling me 2 weeks ago that Julian was the backup quarterback. If he doesn't trot out there with the 3s, I mean, you could ask the same question that we just asked about Lincoln. What is Ryan Day telling you if Lincoln comes out on the field and he's coming back next year? So
true.
I mean, it's gonna be an interesting tightrope for Ryan Day to walk. It's actually honestly hilarious, the place that we've arrived with this quarterback position. We've went how many years where they would say on Buckeye Talk and Buckeye Scoop and all of the mainstream Ohio State programs where Ryan Day would complain in every press conference, I wish I had 4 scholarship quarterbacks. I wish I had 4 scholarship quarterbacks. Well, buddy, you got 5. Now have fun with it. So we'll see how you manage it now that you have 5 scholarship quarterbacks after wishing for 4 for 3 or for the first 5 years of your career. You said in a press conference, I wish I had 4 scholarship quarterbacks. And not only do you have 4, you have a 5th. So it's going to be super exciting to see how Ryan Day manages. It's just another thing to watch with this team and how it develops.
Yeah, no, definitely look forward to. I'm saying I think at least 4 plays on Saturday, so we might get to see everyone. All right, Juck, my last one for you. It is officially lying season as Ron has deemed it. I don't lie, but everyone else on this channel does. So I want to ask you, and we talked to Anand about this earlier. Is it natty or bust season for Ohio State? I've talked about it. For me, the floor is you play in the national championship, and if you lose to a Georgia Force, it is what it is. It's an even talented team. Ron said it's not okay for us to lose any games this season. It's win or go home, basically, for this season. So I'm going to ask you, is it natty or bust for Ohio State in 2024?
I kind of have your opinion on this, Q. I mean, it's football after all. You know, sometimes the best team doesn't win. Things happen with referees, with penalties, with call reversals. We've seen it before. Momentum can change. Sometimes things happen, but this team better be in that game. They better be in that national championship game, or else something's gone very, very wrong, in my opinion.
Follow up. Do they get it done? Yes or no?
Yes. They're going to get it done this year.
You heard it here first. Bet the Natty. Put your mortgage on it. Juck said it here. If they lose, go to him. All right, Juck. That's
Ohio
all
State Rutgers in the Natty.
Hey, that's a win right there. That's all the questions I got for you. I greatly appreciate you coming through and hanging out with us. Everyone in the chat, go ahead and like the video. Make sure if you're on Twitter, like, sub, all that good. Find that, get in the community, all that stuff. Juck, let the people know where they can find you on the daily.
Check me out at Juck on Bucks every morning at 9 a.m. on Menace to Sports.
There you go. If you want to find me, I am not hard to find. I am City Boy Quitting on Twitter. Find Josh on the Instagram and Minor League Films here on the YouTube. If you are in the movies, go ahead and check me out over there. Ron, get us out of here.
Yeah, we're running long. It's 9:02. Juck is on Menace to Sports at 9. So if you are up in the mornings with us and you are kicking it, tune right into Menace to Sports right after us. Juck goes. No, it's not live. It is a pre-recorded, but no, Juck show. Huh?
It's live.
Juck show is live at 9 a.m. Right after us. So make sure that you check that out and tune in over there on the Menace to Sports platform. A big thank you to Juck joining us today. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. It's 2_TEES. We're running a little long today, so we got to wrap it up. A massive thank you for Juck for joining us today. It was awesome. We absolutely have to do this again. Hopefully have a chance to pop up on the post-game show this Saturday. So tune into that if you are there. So, yeah, big thank you to Juck for joining us today. And as always, go Bucks and OH.
Ayo.
Ayo.
Yeah.